Well, hello, and welcome to another SciTechNature presentation. It is for April the 28th, 2020. And I thought we'd begin with some of this fast-moving or slow-moving stuff. So we live here in a semi-arid area, and we see the beautiful blooms from the various cacti. And I thought that would be a nice, short beginning topic. So let's go. I just love those explosions of incredible beauty. All right, I'm going to shift a little bit. I promised from last week that I was going to tell you a little bit more about your computer's behavior and how you can make it behave better. And so today, I'm doing this with Windows, and I'm doing it within Chrome, although you can do it within the Firefox, and I suspect as well it's also available in the Mac, but don't quote me on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can make your computer run a little bit better, a little smarter, by removing all the rubbish that gets placed on your computer by various exterior sources. So we're going to work with CCleaner today, and I'm going to show you how to install it and how it runs. It's just remarkably simple, and it leaves you with a cleaner computer. So let's have a go at it. So I'm going to open up a new Google page, and I'm going to type CCLEANER, CCleaner, enter. And up pops this little beauty here. And what we're going to do, here's the symbol, so it's easy to spot. So what we're going to do is hit the download, so make it nice and fast, free CCleaner download. So we're going to click on that. And what you want to pay attention to is they want you to buy their pricey version, and I don't blame them. And it's good. And if you like it, I highly recommend you uh, donate or buy the professional version. Won't do any harm. However, the free version is extremely good. So we're going to scroll down here. And right here, where you can see you can download it from two different locations, we'll go to CCleaner. We'll go CCleaner and get it from there. So here we are. It says it's click here to install. So I'm going to, look at this, it's popped up right here. I don't know why I did that. Click there to install. And it's throwing it into your PC into downloads, which is just fine. And you can see there's download, here's your PC. There you can see your downloads right there. So we're going to say, yeah, go right ahead. There's the CC setup. So we're going to put that, hit that button there. And down at the bottom here, you can see that the progress in which it's taking to download the installer. Okay, it's done. You hit that little stripe there and open when done. Click there. And there we go. I'm going to move this so you can see it over here. And this is what you're looking at. And we're going to hit install. And it's going to say, well, free, no, decline. You don't want any extra stuff there. You just want the CCleaner. So just go on that. And now it offers you to see release notes. You don't really want to see those unless you're into that stuff. But it will run CCleaner, and we're going to click on that. And so we click on check my PC health. And go through a variety of clicks where it tells you what wonderful things it's going to do. And you finally come to this one here. It says the programs. It says we need to close these items so we can analyze them. That's fine. Make sure that there's nothing that you wanted to save on your browser because it's going to close it now, whether it be Firefox or Google Chrome. So I'm going to hit close and analyze. There it goes. It says, the application is taking a long time to close. Would you like me to force it to close? Yes, you do. And away it goes. And so now it's going to check through the various aspects of your computer's health, but it doesn't take too long. Of course, the more stuff you've got on your computer that's needs to be flushed out, the longer it'll take. But your PC feels under the weather. We found some issues we'd like to resolve. Make it better. Nice and simple. Let's click on that. And I'm not saying that I know a whole lot about what it's actually doing, but I've used CCleaner now for at least 5 years, if not longer. And I've never had any trouble with it whatsoever. It's really been a very useful app, and leaves my computer clean and running smoothly. So this only appears the first time you start up. Your PC is feeling good now. Make it feel better with a superstar with Pro? Nah, you don't really need to do that. So go up here and just go ahead and close it at this point here. So we just have a little bit more to do. We're going to open CCleaner again. And this time you'll see this thing here that says custom scan. You click on that. And then at the bottom here, click analyze. Now it's just going to go through the system one more time. You can see it's just got a few little bits and pieces there because it's already done the cleaning. And I'm showing you this so next time you do it, you just have to click on this thing and it shows you, this is where you click. And you can hit run cleaner. Do you want to the selected files will be deleted from your computer. Now, this is worth doing, and you only have to do it once. Do you wish to continue? Yes, I wish to continue. Okay, that was pretty clean. Now, the next thing is your registry. So click on this thing here and go to Scan for Issues. And look at that. It's found quite a few. You'll see the bar here if it finds more. But it's getting, the bar is shrinking. That means that it's, as you go down, there's a whole bunch of stuff there that's a bit of a problem. And all this stuff, most of it is lint, but the computer has to pay attention to it. And so it slows down your computer. So you really want to get rid of this stuff here. So now that it's done, it says 100% right there. I'm going to hit fix selected issues. Well, when you do this, it'll ask if you want to make a backup registry for making the changes. Yes, you do. You only have to make the registry once. Once you've done it, you're all set. If you don't want to do it, I have to tell you, I've never had to go and grab my registry later on in all the years that I've done it. So if you don't want to do it, you'll probably survive okay. But I'm the cautious kind of person, so I'm going to hit yes. Let me grab this and put it over here. So I'm going to go over here, go to New, and New folder. Hit rename, and I'm going to call it CCLEANER, CCleaner Reg for registry. And I'll open that up. And I'll hit save. And so they'll always save into that registry. So if you do have any trouble, you can load the registry back and everything should be running normal again. Like I say, never had any trouble with it. Okay, fix all selected issues. There we go. And it's done. And close. And you can close this. You're done with this. I would say use your CCleaner, which used to stand, by the way, for crap cleaner back when they just started, but they thought it was not nice enough a word and children might shy away from it. So they changed it to CCleaner. At this point here, you can restart your computer and chances are real good. You'll see that your computer runs much faster and smoother at this point in time. All right, then, this concludes the CCleaner tutorial. Let me know what you find out, and I'm here always so you can ask me questions and let me know. And just in time for Earth Day, Michael Moore's The Planet of the Humans is out, and it's available on YouTube, so you don't have to buy it or anything. You can go right to it, and the link, of course, will be down below. It's not an encouraging picture. It doesn't look good. And this video really points it out, and I have to say that brought to light things that I didn't really realize, and I'm shocked, and I think it's really worth watching. Here's a snippet of it.
It was long past time for me to come to grips with the other elephant in the living room, the profit motive. The only reason we've been force-fed the story climate change plus renewables equals worse saved is because billionaires, bankers, and corporations profit from it. And the reason we're not talking about overpopulation, consumption, and the suicide of economic growth is that would be bad for business, especially the cancerous form of capitalism that rules the world, now hiding under a cover of green.
Today, Bloomberg Philanthropies is making, I'm happy to announce, a new investment of $30 million in the Beyond Coal campaign. We have more. I'm glad to say that more than a dozen additional funders have committed to match that $30 million.
And who were these new partners? One of them was Jeremy Grantham, billionaire, world's leading timber investment advisor. They were not investing in trees to turn them into nature preserves, which might answer another riddle. Why is this name redacted on the Sierra Club's tax return? Would they be embarrassed to take $3 million from a man who made his living selling the forests of the world? Bloomberg bringing a timber investment billionaire to the party was no coincidence. Bloomberg sponsored a UN climate session to discuss wrapping up biomass and biofuels around the world. Billionaires were in love with the idea of turning what was left of nature into green profits. Remember when Al Gore had gotten Richard Branson to invest billions into saving the planet?
Richard Branson, founder of Virgin Atlantic, powered a Boeing 747 from London to Amsterdam on a coconut oil mixture to highlight the potential of this amazing oil as a clean energy biofuel.
Branson had actually invested in biofuels. He was attempting to replace the jet fuel damaging the planet with biofuels that required the consumption of the living planet. And it was game on for the airline industry.
Dozens of researchers from all over the Northwest gathered in Missoula the past 2 days to explore the idea of converting the region's massive reserves of wood into jet fuel, especially with the demand for aircraft fuel expected to grow by 1 billion gallons in the Northwest alone.
United Airlines will buy a $30 million stake in biofuel company Fulcrum Bioenergy. The airline used 3.9 billion gallons of fuel last year.
What technology was Silicon Valley billionaire Vinod Khosla hoping to profit from?
Nature takes 1 million years to produce our crude oil. Kior can produce it in seconds.
The company took over this old paper mill where logs are picked up by a giant claw, dropped into a shredder, and pulverized into wood chips.
Clean gasoline.
Green gasoline.
There must be a downside.
There is no downside.
The bank that crashed the economy, ruined millions of lives, and has their tentacles on the levers of power. What would their favorite form of green energy be?
One of the very interesting markets that we deal with is Brazil. It's unlike any other market in that today, alternative energy isn't really alternative energy. It's so much a part of the fabric of the society. The country began to utilize its vast resources of sugarcane to produce ethanol.
There was a man from Goldman Sachs who was particularly in love with turning forests into profits.
Has everybody got enough coffee? You might want to get some more.
Meet David Blood, former CEO of asset management for Goldman Sachs. How much money did Mr. Blood believe should be invested in green energy?
A natural alignment for something in the order of $40 to $50 trillion worth of capital.
$40 to $50 trillion. And who was going to help the man from Goldman Sachs? Help him raise that astronomical amount of money?
A gentleman some of you may recognize and know, Bill McKibben. It's entirely dependent on what kind of political will we can muster. And if we do not get this done very fast, then we're not going to get it done.
And so Bill McKibben went forth to generate the political will for trillions of dollars in green investments.
Our next guest has been called our nation's leading environmentalist.
And you are, in some sense, the grand poobah of the environmental movement.
My guest tonight is on a global crusade.
On a global crusade for what?
Commit to divesting from fossil fuels. We can't justify investing our money in companies that are basically running Genesis backward.
So when you divest from fossil fuels and invest in green funds, what are you investing in? I took a deep dive into Securities and Exchange Commission filings to find out. For instance, in the Green Century funds, recommended by 350.org and Bill McKibben, I found less than 1% solar and wind, and 99% things like mining, oil and gas infrastructure companies, including a tar sands exploiter, McDonald's, one of the companies driving meat consumption across the planet, Archer Daniels Midland, one of the world's largest producers of biofuel, Coca-Cola, the largest creator of plastic pollution on Earth, logging and paper companies, including one that brags about biomass burning, and banks. Lots of banks, including BlackRock, the largest financer of deforestation on Earth.
There is no other way of putting it. Michael Moore's film is an all-out attack on the green organizations, the vast majority of which are taking money from the big corporations and turning a blind eye towards the biofuel orgy that's going on across the planet. It really is a very disturbing picture, and I highly recommend watching it, despite the fact that you're not going to be feeling great after you've watched this movie. I would also add that Michael Moore can expect a screaming host of indignation from these various organizations saying that he's created a biased viewpoint. But I have to say, the movie is pretty compelling. And to watch the leaders of these groups sort of hum and haw when asked who their major contributors are is shameful. Likely published because it was Earth Day, and perhaps coincidental that Michael Moore published his movie The Planet of the Humans at the same times. Here is a rather depressing follow-up, which basically is the scientific data that allows you to understand what is going on with our planet. And they talk about illegal logging and stuff, but the problem really is not the illegal logging; it's the legal logging that's going on for the biofuel. That basically they said it in the Planet of the Humans. It pointed out that if you ran the entire world on biofuel for a year, it would use up every bloody tree on the planet. So this is not a healthy way to go. Down here, there's an interesting quote he has here. Let's see if we find it. What the big data revolution has helped us understand is the environment is often doing worse than we thought it was. The more we map and analyze, the more we find the state of the environment, albeit Antarctic ice sheets, wetlands, or forest, is dire. Big data tells us we are running out of time, says Professor Watson. And the article will be at the bottom, and I recommend reading it. The media is littered with these. This is what I refer to as yellow science journalism. Fusion energy gets ready to shine, finally. And you'll read through the whole thing, that's the hook. You can see they've got a lovely picture there, zooming back on the article, and it's quite sophisticated. You get down and you read the very bottom here, it tells you right here that there's no guarantee that the ITER will achieve fusion by 2035. Well, that's a far, far call away from the word finally. And if you ask me, and I follow this fairly closely, they don't have a clue as to how to create nuclear fusion at this point. Here's another article I just want to touch on. Fascinating article about the Eurasian ice sheet collapse that raised the seas by 8 meters, which is a significant amount, as you can imagine. And again, the magical era is 14,000 years ago. It sort of falls within this period between 14,000 and 11,000 years ago, when all hell is breaking loose. There's the possible impact in Greenland, the die-off of the megafauna, and it just is an interesting sort of addition in terms of that period of the world's history. A good read. The 4 moons that orbit Jupiter, they are approximately the size of our own moon, but have a completely different composition. It would appear that Io is made of pizza. No, I'm just kidding. It looks like a pizza. It has virtually no impact craters on it and is absolutely a remarkable topography, volcanoes everywhere, very sulfurous, and it has a plasma link between the parent planet and the moon itself. Then you have Europa, which again has very few impacts on it, and is covered in cracks. They believe it's the smoothest moon in the solar system. It only has it's comparable to to Holland in terms of its ups and downs. So they believe it's in isostatic equilibrium, which means it's floating on an ocean of water, or very likely so. And then there's Ganymede. And Ganymede here, as you can see, they've just made a map of Ganymede. And there's a video of it as well, which I'll play as well in a minute. And Ganymede is very interesting because you notice how if you look at the way it's cracked, it almost looks like the pieces are just coming apart. Well, when I was a younger man, just after they got these pictures, I actually went and they gave you the full map as a strip. I cut out those pieces and sort of pasted the brown ones together. And yes, it ended up with a smaller sphere. Is it expanding like a popcorn, or is it just floating around like that, just breaking up? Who knows? But very much an interesting moon, and it has more impacts than the two inner moons we've just talked about. And then the last moon is Callisto, and Callisto is pockmarked like crazy from impacts. Now that's sort of interesting because you think of Jupiter as being a gravity well which pulls in meteorites and comets. And we saw that some 8 years ago when we actually filmed them falling into Jupiter. It's extraordinary that with that gravity well, that the closer moons don't have more impacts, but it seems to be the other way around. The outer moons have more impacts and the inner moons have less impacts. Go figure. Anyway, interesting article, and I'll also just do the very short video. Oh, they rotate the moon of Ganymede. Continuing my fascination with microorganisms, this excellent short documentary gives you a view into the microorganisms through the various toolbox that's available when looking through a microscope at these very, very small animals. The documentary is called Microbes Don't Actually Look Like Anything. And it really is a fascinating insight into the techniques that are used to view the microscopic world.
There are other ways, though, to contend with this challenge, one of which is built on one of those simple yet strange properties of our world. You don't always need to shine light directly onto an object to see it. This technique is called Darkfield Microscopy, which sounds like it must be almost the opposite of bright field microscopy. It's not. The two techniques are actually very similar. Light travels from a source through a condenser, goes through the sample, and then it travels into the objective lens, producing the image we see. But what we want in darkfield microscopy is for the beam of light to hit the sample, but not our eye. So in darkfield microscopy, a circular disc is placed inside the condenser, blocking the central part of the light from shining through the sample and into our eye, or our camera. This means that when there is no sample on the slide, all you see is black. But the disc doesn't block all of the light. There's still a hollow cone of light that travels around the disc, unable to reach the objective or our eyes, but that still hits the sample. When it does, those microscopic transparent bodies scatter those hidden rays into our view, and as they do, an image of their bodies forms against a dark background, providing us with this almost cinematic footage. Another method to get better contrast than bright field microscopy is called phase contrast microscopy, and it's built on working with a property of light that we can't actually directly experience. Microbes, or really anything that is easily visually observed with bright field microscopy, are called amplitude objects because as light passes through them, the amplitude of the light wave changes, which we see as changes in light intensity. But there is another class of specimens. These are called phase objects. As light passes through these objects, the waves slow down and shift slightly in phase compared to the unaffected light around it. And if you're wondering what that means in terms of what we can see, that's the issue. Our eyes don't process these differences in phase. And so in the final image, these objects, or in our case organisms, are very difficult to see. Well, in the 1930s, a physicist named Fritz Zernike developed a method to shift the direct light just slightly enough so that these changes in phase could actually be translated into changes in amplitude, producing an image of these formerly hard-to-see phase objects by essentially treating them as amplitude objects. There's a lot of physics in this that we're not going to get into, but the result was so important that it would eventually win Zernike the Nobel Prize in Physics. And of course, selfishly, we here appreciate his work because it lets us see more of our hidden microbial friends.
Turning again to technology, I thought this would be appropriate time to talk about this website called Flixable, which is basically sort of I call it a parasite on Netflix. And what's really wonderful about it is it allows you to find stuff that much easier and with more accuracy, things that you're interested in rather than the Netflix site itself. And I'll give you a quick show of this. So you can see here, you can pick by genre. And first of all, let me just scroll down. You can see which ones were added at different days. So you can see April 26th, The Last Kingdom, so you can see all the movies through the various days that have been added to Netflix. Going to the top here, let's say you're particularly interested in, say, science fiction movies. So if I look through here, I'll find this science fiction. It's got to be around here. Sci-fi, TV, sci-fi, fantasy. Let's see if they have another version. There's sci-fi fantasy. I'll click on that. So how rating do I want to, what other people rate them as? I'll go for a 4. People who want to rate things are usually pretty critical. And there's sort by new on Netflix, all that, and I'll leave that alone. And I'll just hit filter. And here you go. Here's it gives you the latest science fiction movies that have come out. And of course, this could apply to romance movies or adventure movies or any kind of movies that you might be interested in. I'll put the link below. You will find this most useful, especially if you use a Netflix and you're stuck indoors for the duration of the pandemic. This is another interesting article at phys.org. Ocean biodiversity has not increased substantially for hundreds of millions of years. Now, this basically, they've taken the evidence and played with it. And it is interesting how they've done it. I'll let you go ahead and read on that because it is a little complicated. But it's really interesting to come to this part here. He says, importantly, though, we don't find any evidence that diversity increased in a continuous, sustained way through the long intervals of geological time. This is a major departure from previous studies of global diversity. These studies concluded that marine animal biodiversity had increased steadily over the last 200 million years, culminating in modern levels that were greater than at any point in Earth's history. In contrast, our work suggests that modern levels of biodiversity, at least at the regional scales we studied, are not exceptional. So that's an interesting article and a piece of data worth reading, and of course it'll be down below. An interesting article here. Deep sea microbes discovered that feed on ethane, and the mechanism is reversible. This is very interesting. They've taken these creatures and bred them in a lab to discover how they do this. Down towards the end, and I'll cut to the chase down here at the bottom, and I've read most of the article. This way, the microbes described here are significant for the global carbon cycle and the rising atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration in two ways. On one hand, they use ethane in the deep sea and thus prevent this gas from reaching the atmosphere. And on the other hand, they could offer a solution for the industry to reduce its carbon emissions. This is still a long way off, Wegener says, but we are pursuing our research. One thing we know for sure, we shouldn't underestimate the smallest inhabitants of the sea. And article will be down below. Soon the North Pole will be ice-free in the summer. Now, I have a childhood friend who lives in Denmark, and I often tease him and say, well, you know, Eric, you guys are going to have to move soon because with all that melting ice, your country's going to be underwater. And you know, he has no real response to that because it's probably true. The highest point in Denmark, I mean, most of it is really like Holland, very flat, but the highest point is called Sun Mountain, Solbjerg, and is 200 meters high. So, you know, I can't really see the entire Danish population cramming itself up on that hillock. Anyway, this article here says that they can expect to see the Arctic ice-free during the summer by 2050. That's just around the corner. You know, that's Eric's grandchildren are going to have to deal with this and the resulting rise in ocean height. Down at the bottom here, he says, how often the Arctic will lose its sea ice cover in the future critically depends on the future CO2 emissions, the study shows. Well, that's pretty self-evident, isn't it? If the emissions are reduced rapidly, free ice years only occur occasionally. With higher emissions, the Arctic Ocean will become ice-free for most years. Hence, humans still have an impact on how often the Arctic loses its year-round ice cover. Still has an impact? That's nicely put. I think you could be pretty confident that you're going to be looking at the greening of Greenland in the coming future. So I have suggested to Eric that, well, since Greenland is owned by Denmark, this little itty-bitty country owning a continent, maybe they should start to consider doing some migration to Greenland, and maybe it'll live up to its name as a greener place than Denmark will be, because it'll be underwater. Well, that's all we have time for today on our presentation. However, you'll notice in your email that I've given you a link, a Zoom link, so that we can, after you've seen the presentation, I'm going to start it at 12 o'clock, a Zoom get-together for SciTechNature people. I really have no idea of the format or what we're going to do, but I thought this would be just a sort of a fun way to get together. So all you have to do is click on the link when you see it, and when you do see your image there, you'll either be muted or unmuted. I'm not sure. If you haven't got anything to say, hit the mute button, which will be down on the lower left-hand side. And if you've got something today to say, hit the unmute. And also there's a button you'll find down there was you can put your hand up if you've got something you want to say. That way it just remains slightly organized and we don't end up like an entire gaggle strangling the bandwidth. That would make the Zoom experience rather unpleasant. Well, that's all for now. I bid you a safe week, and may we meet soon. I miss you all, and take care. Goodbye.